Ladies and gentlemen, the coaching carousel makes one more stop on Sportswire Radio before jolly old Saint Nick delivers those Christmas trees and those Christmas gifts right up this coming Thursday. But we bring on a man to conclude our coaching carousel over the past month on Sportswire Radio that hasn't been here certainly a lot longer than a New York Minute. But the good news is he's a lot more local this time than when we've seen him in the past. And he's at his best stop yet because he's going to talk about those Queens Knights men's basketball team. And he's going to talk about the momentum from last season that's starting to be carried over. We're going to talk about some players that you're going to remember. We're going to talk about even somebody from overseas that, well, let's just say, I'm sure we're going to be seeing him play, whether it's here or elsewhere, and certainly overseas, eventually professionally. We're going to talk about a couple of local guys, and in fact, one player that actually played basketball just a few blocks away from where a buddy of yours Truly's is, and I think a family member still might be, or who knows what. And we'll talk about those things. We'll even bring up maybe another Jason. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll also talk about Game Breaker Athletics, but we'll most certainly talk about tonight our Queens Knights men's basketball team, who are coming off the best season last year that they had in nearly 15 years. And we're going to definitely bring up that big win over Malloy. Sorry to the other Jason. We're going to talk about some other things, and we're going to bring up Coach Collier. We're going to bring up the rest of the staff, plus who knows what else. Now, I know it has been, I think, about 2 years since this man has come onto the platform. Now, this is his sixth appearance, so technically he is the sixth man of Sportswire Radio. Now, that'll certainly now also make him, I think tied for most appearances in Sportswire Radio coaching history with another Jason. But I'm not going to play rock, paper, scissors to break the tie. But what I am going to do is introduce this man. I am going to give him that introduction for a platform that he most certainly helped build and reintroduce himself, and especially get us ready for the Queens Knights second half of the season here coming up December 31st. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's start this show off here in style on Sportswire Radio, the number one global radio station where all sports matters. So, with that, without further ado, here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show. He's the only coach we've ever had on Sportswire Radio to come to us via not one, not two, but 3 coaching stops. He's at his best stop yet. He's the assistant coach for our Queens Knights men's basketball team. He's otherwise known as Coach G. Simply put, J. Jason Gary. So, Coach G, how are we doing?
Well, excellent after that intro. I mean, like, I've been waiting for that, like, for weeks, ever since we scheduled this. I'm not going to lie.
I just did this when you first came on 5 years ago or so, give or take. You know, we're doing them via the phone, and hi, New York's number one show, The Sports Report. Then you came on and got a little bit better. Now I'm doing war chants, I'm screaming, and that's also coming off where it took me 2 hours to get back from Greenpoint. And I was screaming there. I was actually doing a voiceover job, and I kept screaming. I got into it, and I was like, and my voice said no, but no, we're doing it. Coach Gaudioso's back, and you are the only coach ever on this platform who's come on here now with 3 stops, 3 separate stops.
Four.
Well, but the other place you didn't come here for Malloy. That's why I said 3.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah,
no, for sure.
It's good to see you. How you been?
Same here. Excellent. Doing excellent. You know, busy as always, but busy's good.
Yes.
especially during the holiday season. But now good to have a break, a mandated
Yeah.
break from the NCAA, so we can catch up on some things and kind of hit the reset button.
Yeah, you guys are in a break for a week now, right? It's the 23rd
for sure,
to
yeah.
31st. Yep.
To 29th, yeah. We go back to practice the 29th on the 30th, and then we play again 31st, like you said.
Yes.
But I'll date myself right here. I actually remember the first time I was actually on your show was even on YouTube. I believe it was on SoundCloud.
It was only on SoundCloud, correct. That
Right.
goes back, and the other Jason, who certainly we'll talk about later. Yeah, same thing. I mean, I go back to the days of SoundCloud, but now it's YouTube, and almost 2,000 subscribers, and heavyweight hitters that you
Huge,
see people
definitely.
on TV. But we want the coaches back. We wanted the coaching carousel to continue, and and we saved the best for last. By the way, I just want to point that out. We saved the best for last. We had that other guy named Jason. We had certainly Coach Slitwin returned. We had Mr. Wells come on in, but we saved the best for last. I was gonna bring Ryan Highland on, but I was like, nah, we're gonna go bring Coach. We're gonna save the best for last. Coach Flores, nah, Coach Griffin. Well, I would bring him back, but nevertheless, we wanted to save the best for last here, and that's why we did that the way we did it.
Awesome. I appreciate it. And those are some heavy hitters. That's an all-star lineup for sure. So I'm glad to be batting cleanup in that. So
and welcome home. It's certainly good to see you back. So enough about that. We'll talk about some other things later. So Coach Gaudioso, it has certainly been a lot longer than a New York Minute. I'm going to set the tables, especially for those that are listening and watching here in prime time on the brightest lights, the biggest stage, the platform that you and the Queens College Knights men's basketball team have helped build, Sportswire Radio. Talk to me about how you guys go on break with some momentum and a huge win over Georgian Court.
No, for sure. It was a tough fought win. We were actually up a considerable amount, probably about 15, 16 points. They fought back, very, very big heart team. They chipped away, but our guys have been the wins that we've had so far this year, our guys have been very good at keeping composure. Guys have been really good at holding it together and being cohesive. And when I say that, not getting on each other if the other team's scoring or starting to come back, they've been kind of more, huddling and just holding together, and holding each other accountable. That's probably been the biggest thing during these games. So when you have that type of resiliency, it just kind of gets you excited for the later part of the season, because once the more conference games come on, that's the type of things that you need, type of attributes you need in order to really win those type of games.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because if you look at last year's team, you guys really gelled in conference play. And I think getting these games out of the way now, as we're going to shift into the new year, into conference play, winning a couple of games here going into the break, 2 of the last 3 games, I think because of what you guys went through last season, again, having the program's best year, nearly 15 years, winning a playoff game, doing certain things that haven't been done here in a long time. I think it's got to be especially a good feeling for the guys to get a win here going into break, because we know last year how well we played in conference play, and we're about to start those conference games. And I think that's why it's very important to go out on top going into break.
Absolutely. And so I'm excited for the remainder of the season. You know what I mean? Because it shows, like I said, this resiliency and the way the guys have been playing when they play well just shows their potential. Right. So I kind of equate it to building the house. Right. We have that framework there. We have the wood there. Right. We're just still mixing the cement. Right? So,
well, that's a good point. That reminds me of one of my first jobs out of high school, which is why I'm here not doing building jobs. Was my uncle was a handyman, and I never forget we worked on Prescott Bush's house in Greenwich, Connecticut. And after working on that for 6 weeks, I was like, yeah, I'm not going into that business. So I'm glad you're in the business of building basketball teams. But going and having a season like you did last year, and what does that do for the program and where we're going to go this season? Talk to me about that for a few minutes. I know we haven't touched base in a while, but last year, let's recap that, because how important that season is going into this year, where these guys who were here last year, they have that feeling of winning, because we haven't had that here in Queens College for quite a long time. As I said, the best year the program has had in nearly 15 years. So talk to me how important last year is for the guys that are back now that we're about to go into conference play.
No, for sure. I think first and foremost, it shows the possibility, right, and the opportunity. Obviously, we're part of the ECC, the East Coast Conference. It's a very super competitive conference.
Very yes.
and I think it shows their ability to play in the tops of that conference, right? Having coming within a couple of possessions, losing the stack in the playoff game, you only lost by 3 or 4 possessions, and then after that, if you would have won that game, you would have played Damon, right? Who wound up winning the conference and going to the tournament, and who was one of the top teams in the country last year, and is the top 1 teams in the country this year as well. So I think it gives the guys confidence to kind of show, hey, we can play with those top teams. Hey, we can be competitive, right? And it's a good mindset to go in with into this season as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I think having that momentum certainly carries you guys. And at the top of the list, you guys have got some awards. Let's talk about a player from overseas. I mean, I've known you a while. You have recruited some amazing players throughout your various stops, especially, I watched you personally at CCNY, obviously, another place in another place called Patchogue, Long Island. We'll leave that at that, and certainly at Malloy. You've been a part of helping recruit some great players, but you got a couple, and I want to start off at the top from Henry Menender. I mean, my goodness. I mean, you got this guy for 4 years, and the possibilities are endless. I mean, talk to me about him and how he's probably going to be arguably the rookie of the year in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, it's still kind of early, I hope. He's got a couple of Rookie of the Weeks. He's gotten 3 Rookie of the Week so far.
Got one just before we went on the air.
Exactly, yeah. And, and in speaking to him about it too, he's another one, like previous players of mine that have gotten Rookies of the Year, like Yaz and Alex Tabata and those guys, they weren't satisfied. Their Rookie of the Weeks were great, but they really wanted the Rookie of the Year. Right. So, in talking to him, he's like, listen, I'm not going to be satisfied until I get that. So, when guys say things like that, or say things of, I want that, but I also want to win, and they have that type of mentality, that kind of shows their work ethic, and that kind of shows what they're about. Right. So I love when guys have that type of mindset. I love when that guys have that type of instinct, because that just shows that they want even more. They're not satisfied. And those are the type of attributes that are going to help you win in the long run.
What is an intangible that makes Henry such a special player? I mean, you're talking about, again, 3 Rookie of the Weeks already. You're talking about a guy who very well could average a double-double this year. And we're talking about in this conference. What are some of the intangibles that make him such a special player?
I think first and foremost his coachability. So whenever we give him an instruction, whether it's, setting a screen or whether it's his post moves or shooting or whatnot, right? Whatever it is, he's very coachable, right? So, he's not, arguing with you. He's not, trying to go back at you, right? He's listening. He's understanding. You got to keep in mind too, it's also a little bit different because it's his first time in the U.S., right? So overseas playing is a little bit different in certain aspects, than the U.S. So it's been an adjustment, but the way he's made the adjustment has been tremendous, as you can see from the accolades. And if you look at all the games we've won so far, he's been obviously a big piece of that, right? He's playing the 5 spot right now. He's starting at the 5. You look at his stats. He's played every game. He started every game, right? He's consistently going day after day and night after night. So that kind of really shows how tough he is. Like you said, with even a couple of years still remaining. So.
That's an interesting point that you made in the adjustment from coming here from Finland. I know you've had a lot of players. There's one particular here in the chat that is, well, let's just say a Mustang. We'll leave that at that. I think you know who that is. But in terms of that adjustment, I mean, what do you do, or what do you say to try to help him with that?
I think it's just kind of showing them the game, just kind of, how we, showing them film, showing them things we do here in the U.S., showing previous players, kind of, I like to give these guys a lot of film and work with them and kind of show them, here's the things you should be doing. Here's the things, how we do things. Yes, we do a lot of on-court instruction, but I also like showing them videos as well, and just kind of showing them, the way the game has been played here, kind of different things that they can add to their, bag of goods. I like to call it, so to speak.
I've never heard you use that term.
I've never used that term before.
I never heard you use that term before here.
No, I just say they're big. So you should say, when I say bag of goods, what do they do really well, and kind of what are they're known for. So with Henry, what I love about Henry is he's versatile, right? He's 6'9". Everyone thinks, he can dunk, he can rebound, he can post, but he can also shoot too. right? So if you look at some of his, I mean, yeah, he's not shooting often, right? But if you look, he's taken a couple of threes so far this year, so he has the ability to hit it
Yeah,
from
I was
long
going to ask
range.
you about that because we know the European background and we know the European game. And is that something that you think maybe is an advantage because of the overseas experience, also that European style that gives him the ability to adjust? I remember what, when Highland would come on here throughout the years, we always talked about that influence and the certain, Giannis and how that was a way to, help his team and, certainly overcome certain liabilities they had. But for you guys and having a guy like Henry with his European experience, obviously playing over there, you think that's something that's adding also to maybe his success here early?
Absolutely. I think, the big thing with him also too with European is if you look at any of the games they've played European style basketball and a lot of the major programs follow, like UConn, for
Yep.
example, right? They model a lot of their game after Europe. And the thing with Europe is if you look at their off ball movement, they're constantly moving, right? So it's huge just because when you have that type of mindset and you have that kind of knowledge of the game already, like that's huge in terms of his transition from
You've
Europe
always
to
talked
here.
about intangibles. You've always talked
Right.
about those basketball smarts. You've always talked about doing things without the ball, being someone that can communicate with his teammates. So obviously Henry brings that. And I think that's why there's no question that he's been very successful. I want to ask you about something, and we're going to come back to a few more players shortly, but I know that this is the fourth stop that you've been on since I've known you. This is the third stop you've come on here, but in terms of what you get to do here, maybe as a coach, what are some of the differences maybe that helps you here at Queens versus other stops that you've been with in terms of how you get a chance to coach these players, whether it's with resources, whether it's time, whether it's film, whatever else that might be? What are some of the things maybe you get to do differently here at Queens as a coach versus other places you've been?
Yeah, so for Queens, I don't know if you noticed, but my role has changed a little bit from previous stops. So right now, like you said before, I've always been in charge of recruiting, always been doing the recruiting aspect of it, right? Given my ties on Long Island and given my history
Right.
and whatnot, relationships, But one of the things I've been focusing on is the offense. So when focused on the offense, you know what I mean? Like the different sets we do, different plays, different things we should be looking for, working with them on game shots, stuff of that nature, right? So that's kind of been more of my focus this year with this team, right? As many, the more points we score, the better, obviously, right? But, but I want to make sure that they're getting the correct looks. And when I say the correct looks, right? Like, are they getting the correct shots, right? Are they cutting correctly? Are they setting screens correctly? Is the court balanced? Are we playing fast like we should be in transition? All different things that I'm monitoring, and that is on the court. It's off the court from film. We use a lot of technology here to do scouting. We use a lot of technology to watch what guys are doing right or wrong, whether it be shooting charts, statistics, just video in general. But having those resources kind of really help to kind of build out the offensive schemes.
I think that's a great point. And I want to also give a plug here before we do anything else. If you are on Instagram right now, or you'll eventually watch this, do me a favor, go follow the Queens College men's basketball team, because guess what, ladies and gentlemen, they have 2,599 followers. So you want to be the 2,600 follower. Well, you can't quite win a prize, but you can help the program and get more coverage for them, and certainly support them and support those who support us. So please support the program. I have the page here. I also have the link. So all you have to do is hit a follow, and we're very honored to have Coach Gaudioso back on here to talk about the success of the Queens Knights men's basketball program. You obviously have another player that got an award, and you talk about honor roll, and I'm looking at Mr. Campbell right here. I mean, a guy is averaging almost 20 points a game, almost 20 a game. I don't know if you've had anybody that has hit 20, at least in the two other stops. I mean, you have a chance to have maybe your best offensive player. He's a transfer player, and he's certainly done a lot for this team so far. And I think the success of the program is certainly going to play a role with Mr. Campbell. So talk to me about the other part of our pronged attack here at Queens.
No, for sure. And up to a week or two ago, was really actually 25. So he was actually sick a couple of days. The flu going around.
Yeah, I had that last month. I had that.
Yeah.
It was
He
terrible.
was either 3 or 4 in the country in scoring. So and the reason why I say that is Taj is a 3 level scorer, right? And when I say 3 level scorer, he can take it to the hoop, he can shoot it, he can catch it off the bounce and shoot. You know, he's very versatile and he's very talented. Like you said, he's a transfer, so he's played at the Division 1 level. He knows what it takes to really compete.
Absolutely.
And he's someone with Taj. He's someone that really just loves it. And we talked about coachability with Henry. He's another guy. You tell him to do something. There's not a no, what coaches. It's automatically done, right? And it's kind of funny because when you have those type of kids, those are usually the better players, right? And they've done really
Yeah,
well and
I
whatnot,
would agree with
right?
that.
And it's like it's no secret sauce in that sense, right? They're coachable. They listen, right? They always compete. So when you have those type of players, that's a dream to coach. So
That's a great point that you made in coachability and his experience being a D1 player. What do you think that does for the rest of the players? Seeing a guy like Taj, who's certainly, been successful. Guy has played in Division 1, a Division 1 player, and he's here at Queens. What do you think that does for the rest of the players and maybe his leadership that he brings here?
I think it influences them. I think it influences them. It makes them compete more at a higher level. I think it's also good because he's been playing for a while, right? This is his last year, unfortunately. you know,
Yeah.
um, but he's so to speak been around the block, right? So they can go to him for knowledge. He can go to him for questions in terms of just what it takes to really compete at this level. What does it take to win? Things of that nature. It's seen as a resource in that sense. When you have an older guy like that who's played at the highest of levels, I look at it as a resource, and then that kind of helps everyone else improve and everyone else get better.
I think that's a great point. I think that his experience, I think, helps some of the players certainly in pulling, as much they can in terms of getting the minutes and making the team overall a better one, especially going into conference play. And the other of your three-pronged attack is a guy, again, not too far from my neck of the woods, from Coney Island. You think about Coney Island and players that have come out of Coney Island. I still remember it as a kid, the Marburys. Everybody talked about the Marburys. You have Dante
No
Prescott,
doubt.
and he is another guy that if this team is going to win some games once again deep into March, Dante Prescott's going to be right there with Mr. Menender and certainly Mr. Campbell.
No, for sure. So Dante's been starting, mostly at the 1, but we have moved him off ball as well. Another player that has experience, right? He played at
Yep.
JUCO level. If you see him on his Instagram, he's played a lot, like just during the summer and leagues and whatnot.
Well, Coney Island. I mean, listen,
Coney Island,
I knew that.
yeah, yeah. Played at OSL, which is ultra competitive.
Yep.
High school, prep school. So again, when you talk about that compete level, and you talk about raising the levels and talking about the influence, right? He's another one just like Taj, where others, can look up to him in a sense, right? And getting that knowledge and getting that influence, But he's really kind of helped us to kind of go. When I say go, what I mean, controlling the game, right? Stuff of that nature. That to me, I think the huge asset is going to be with him. Being on the ball and really controlling the pace and really influence the others, and also his knowledge. Another one, like I said, another one that's been around for a while. If you also, not even just the coachability aspect, but if you have that IQ, because
I knew you were going there.
Long,
That's something else you've talked about over the years. You've talked a lot about that. Those basketball IQs.
The difference between high school to college ball is so huge.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Not even just from the time management aspect, but just like I said, the on court with the strength and the speed and the compete levels, right? These are the type of guys that you want in your program because they're going to help those younger guys adjust. They're going to help those younger guys kind of, and like I'd say, mentor them in a way, right? And kind of show them the ropes, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think again with his experience, that's another player that I think when we're going to play a lot more meaningful games, especially as we go into January, but deep into February and March, that's going to certainly come very handy for us. And also Johnny Jones. We got to talk about Johnny Jones for us here. And you guys definitely have a deep team. And Johnny's going to be another one of those players. I think that's going to be very important for us, especially if we want to repeat or even exceed the success that we had last year.
For sure. Johnny Jones, another great kid. He's our shooter, right? So he plays that 2 spot. He's knocking them down. And let me tell you something. If he sees that first one go in within the first minute or so, it's gonna be a long night for the team. So, he's the type of guy. Johnny's constantly working. So, I see posts all the time from him. I get messages all the time from him. We practice, I don't know if you know, but we practice 6 o'clock in the morning every morning.
Unless I knew, because I remember in a stop that you were once upon a time, and I think somebody's here would know exactly what we're talking about. You guys was 7 o'clock in the morning, and I think when it was at CCNY, you guys were early birds there too, and certainly another fellow named Jason, who you probably know. I mean, he claims that, or some would say, and backed this up yesterday, especially a brother-in-law there, that 5 o'clock in the morning, some people were getting out there. So early bird gets to work.
Yeah, early bird, and he's a guy. We'll practice at 6. I see him at 5 o'clock getting in there. He's on the shooting gun, or he's working out with somebody. You know what I mean? He's a guy that just wants to get better and he wants to improve. And how could you not love that about somebody when somebody wants to do that and they love the game that much? He came from Eagle Academy. He played at a D1 JUCO. Bronx kid, D1 JUCO over at Lakeland. His dad coached, his brother played. Big basketball family. I would say the thing about Johnny is he just loves it. He loves everything basketball.
But that's going to be the common theme, I think, which why this team's so interesting to me, because I think they're all blended by the love of this game, and I think that's why this team is on the cusp of some really great things coming into conference play.
For sure. It's a newer team, right? So it's 15 guys. 4 returners, 3 true freshmen from high school, and then 8 JUCO/transfers. So it's the first. I don't want to say quote unquote, it's the first time they're playing together. Yes, they've been playing together for a while, but they're not. They've been playing together for 3-4 years, 2 years. Right. As crazy as it sounds, they're still learning themselves. They're still learning each other. But I think the more we play, the better, and that's why I'm really excited for later on the season, because I feel like once those conference games really come into play, you're going to see them play even better than what they've been.
I think in this conference, and I've known that in the past, I know Matt Healing at Pace, so I know the D2 style of play. And conference games, every game is basically
every
a
game
tournament
matters.
Game. So
right.
That's what I think makes this so interesting, this conference. So these guys, because of what they're putting in now to get themselves ready, I think we have a team exactly where we want them, and I think we know they're going to be coming up here in a few months from now.
No, absolutely, no question about it. The more work they put in, the better.
Right.
I think you're going to see that. We've started practice the end of August. So we've been going,
which is a big help for you, because in other stops, that certainly once upon a time you'd have to wait till October.
Exactly.
That was a long time. By that
for
point,
sure.
It's like,
for sure. And it wasn't. And I'll say this, that was the first day we coached them. They obviously did their own thing on their own before that. It wasn't the first day they met each other.
No, but in terms of you as a team to do anything organized. Well, October 15th, right? It's always October.
That's 15th. What it was. That's what it was when I was at City College in St. Joe's. The rules have now changed a little bit on the D3, but on the D2 level, a couple of days after you start school, and it being a city university, you can go ahead. So the first day we can go, we went. August 28th.
That's a big help for you. Listen, because and that's why I asked that question a little while ago. In that, I think there is a major difference for what you can do as a coach compared to other stops, because we knew the certain things, the October 15th and, D3 and, you're not on scholarship and you got to do this, you got to do that. But whereas here, these guys are here to win. These guys are here to play. And
these guys, this is, don't get me wrong, they got to go to school, they got to go to classes, but these guys, these guys, they truly, I'll say this about them, they truly love it. They all want to win, and they all want to play at the next level,
Right. And I think that's the point that I think we were trying to, hammer home here, is that in D2, guys are expecting. You've got a couple of them off the bat. I just mentioned that probably going to look to play overseas at a minimum.
Oh,
So
absolutely,
here, and
absolutely.
this is not like we're in other places where go to class. We want you to win, but hopefully you can get a good job somewhere. We can get you in the right place. No, these guys are here and like they're professionals. I mean, these are
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
professionals.
They're looking to play at the
Environment.
next level for sure, for
Absolutely,
sure.
and that's why it makes
Yeah.
it so interesting about where you are, and I think where this team is at the moment.
Definitely. And they live, like you said, with the scholarships and whatnot. All of them, most of them live on campus. And if you know Queens College, if you've
I
been to
do know
Queens
Queens
College,
College very well.
right? I mean, you
Very
can
well.
literally roll out of bed into the gym.
You want to
So,
laugh? You know how I know college? You really want to laugh? The time everybody used when I was a kid, the Time Warner. See, everybody with the cable was on Ksenia Boulevard, and Queens College is on Ksenia
yes,
Boulevard.
yes, yes.
So
Because
as a kid, when we growing up in Brooklyn, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, another Brooklyn player, I always remember we had Time Warner cable, and the cable went out, and I would always look at the back of the box, and it was Ksenia Boulevard, and I always knew as a kid Queens College is on Ksenia Boulevard. So
yep,
I knew that. I can
exactly.
get campus and everything. So
Yep.
that
Exit
totally
24.
that's it. I know. Trust me. St. John's is like further on the right, and you guys are
25.
further
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
left.
yeah.
I
Yes,
mean, I've
exactly.
passed,
It is.
many times there. But we're here with Coach Gaudioso, and if you are here on Instagram, I want you to go give the team a follow. I want you to give the athletics program a follow, and also please support us. If you like to like, share, and subscribe, we'd appreciate that very much. We're going to give the team, we're going to give Coach something else here shortly. I'm going to come back to some of the players in a second, but I want to promote something from you, Coach, in a minute, because you and I were talking about this, and one of the things that's changed since you last came on here a couple of years ago is now you're a part of something really exciting, I think, with Game Breaker Athletics. You're the director of basketball operations, and talk to me about this and how this is going to certainly, I think, help you continue to do what you do best, and that's promoting and coaching the game of basketball.
No, for sure. I appreciate you bringing this up because this has been something new, or newer rather, in my life. Continuing my passion for basketball. But this is, you know, I've always wanted to, you talked about, player development. You talk about guys getting better and competing. Something's always been near to my heart is teaching kids,
Yep.
the right way to play the game. Right. You see all this flashy stuff in the NBA and whatnot, or you see AU and people have treated it more like a business. They've really treated it rather than teaching. This is me trying to really develop kids and teach kids the game of basketball. Right. And what does it take to make your middle school team? What does it take to make your high school team? If you want to play college, what are the things college coaches look for? Things of that nature. So that's really what this is about. We're going to have AAU teams. We already have a couple now for the winter. We just started with our first season. We're starting now in the winter, camps and clinics like you have on the screen. But I think is just really the teaching them the right way to play it and really enjoy it. Enjoy it as much as I do. Enjoy it as much as my guys at Queens do now as well. The gentleman who owns the company, Tom Sigismonti.
Yes.
He's done all the scheduling and operational work for youth basketball for 15 years. So in terms of him knowing different gyms and different contexts and places where you can practice, huge in Long Island. The court time is the biggest commodity. So having someone like that is huge. And obviously, like you said, I'm running the basketball piece of it. I've hired a couple of coaches, already to help coach some of the teams we have that we just had a tryout for about a week ago. But excited to just get this off the ground and just, really do it the correct way.
Well, I'm very excited to see that. And I would imagine that you are certainly maybe talking to some previous players of yours to get involved before I go to the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's no doubt. Let's see. Who is it?
Well, I'm going to go with the first one. Well, yeah, I'm
okay.
going to go with the first one. Zilla's here. Zilla's saying hi. Zilla's waiting for wrestling tomorrow. So we'll see you tomorrow for that. But I think I know this guy. He's a Mustang. He's an SMU Mustang. And he wanted to say, first of all, how many guys were at player development?
Gordon knows the answer to this.
Yeah.
Not many guys. He's talking about St. Joe's. St. Joe's, many of you guys do. But I'll tell you what, Gordon did go to player development a lot. He did. He was one of the few that went to play.
Gordon's really good at business development. You do realize he's much better at business development.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
to be an SMU Mustang, I mean, boy.
And before that, he was at UVA, so he's.
I saw that. Yeah,
Gordon's making moves.
I always said what I always say on here. Gordon was always to me that cog that helped the team, and having the success. Obviously, the huge win at Yeshiva at the time, and he had a certain intangible that you didn't measure based on statistics, and he's one of those guys, and his statistics really are far more successful in boardrooms, especially at places like you just mentioned.
No, for sure. It's funny you said that about the Yeshiva game because I was watching that clip this morning of him. It was about 50 seconds left. He hit that three.
Yes, I remember it very well.
Right, Yeshiva. It's funny because Yeshiva's chanting. Max Stern Center. Yeshiva's chanting defense, right? And Gordon hits that corner three. We go 5. Right, and that to me kind of sealed the game.
Oh my God, that was so. He was that cog that kept us calm, especially when they came back. We had the lead, and they were pushing back, and his experience. He was that guy that gave us that leadership, especially for that young team. That was a young team, and he was able to come in there and really keep it moving, keep it going along, and why you guys had the best season the program had in almost a decade at that time.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say this about Gordon. This is probably the first time I'm sure he's listening still, but it's probably the first time he's ever heard me say this. But he was another kid that was very coachable, right? And I felt that's why he
definitely didn't say that on previous episodes here.
No, but
is that what it was?
But no, I mean, when you have kids like that, all through my history of coaching, it just makes your job that much easier. So for him constantly being at player development, him being very vocal on the court, things like that. Those were all the things that added up to us beating teams that year, like Yeshiva and Baruch and like having a very great season, right?
Dogs. You guys were road dogs. There was a certain style of play. I mean, everything just came. You mentioned Alec Tabata. I mean, there was just a lot of things there with that team that it all kind of came together there. It kind of gelled. Right around this time, actually, it was the John Jay game. You guys held on to it, and right after that, you guys were on your way, and you wound up, again, like I said, having the best record the program had in almost a decade. And that's where it led to you here and Gordon and some others in other high places. And also the head coach, by the way, shout out to him because, he certainly went to other pastures as well. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, for sure. I think we still have a group chat with some of these guys. And, one of the comments that was made was, everybody's kind of done really well, whether it's, Kevin O'Halloran's now the head coach at Saban.
By the way,
school.
Kevin's birthday today. Kevin O'Halloran's birthday. Happy birthday, Kevin O'Halloran. I'm sure you're in a gym somewhere pumping some iron or doing something else, but happy birthday to the big guy, to Big Kev.
Matt Hertz, coach at Miller Place. Ryan McNeely is at Sayville as well in the JV.
And we know Ryan and Gordon were certainly, far better podcasters than yours truly. I mean, because they were obviously they had a niche. Although I think I've got him on celebrities now. I think I beat him now because I've got some I've had the WWE on here. At this point now, I even have people say, I knew you were going to make it. I knew you were going to make it. So it took me some time, but I got the edge over him now. But that's okay.
No, but I mean, for sure, the guys like that have, that can go on and just have successful, careers after they hit school. It's great. That's what coaches love. And the fact that they still keep in touch with us, like to bust our chops.
Well, you guys were good. You guys were a fun team to cover. You guys were exciting to watch. I mean, I did kind of like the CCNY team. You had Yassine Saki, but that team you had, that was a special bunch you guys had. And definitely. That's kind of where it all gelled in. And I have another one of your former players that I know wants to chime in. And there is Mr. Hurd himself. And obviously he's talking about yourself and Gordon as legends. But hope Matt is doing well. And, I always love to see former players come on here, especially St. Joe's players that are here in the chat, not those that used to maybe be on this side of the aisle here. But nevertheless, always love seeing Matt Hurd. And I'm glad that he's doing well. And as Gordon would say, I think he said this even here on previous episodes, ice water. He definitely had ice in his veins. I used that term yesterday, ice in his veins. He most certainly had that. But obviously we'll we'll come back to maybe some of the St. Joe's talk in a minute, but I got to talk
Absolutely.
to you about another player locally that you have on Queens College, and it's a guy, Jaden Pena, and you and I were talking about this off the air, and Severian High School, where it's actually I'm going to be about 2.5 blocks away from it tomorrow because my buddy, Mr. Joseph Rosas, lives right about 2.5 blocks away from there, and I think I have an aunt, if she's still alive, who knows. I actually used to live right up the corner from me. Yeah, well, that's okay. They'll want the check in the mail, but nevertheless, Bavarian High School, I have that ingrained in my head, and you have a player from Severian High School on your team who I think is going to definitely be one of these guys going forward that's going to be really important for you off the bench, especially in conference play, in Jaden Pena.
Yeah, no, for sure. So our nickname for him is JP, obviously because of his letters in his name.
What a
But
good name.
he was actually designated captain this year by his teammates. He was obviously one of the four returners I mentioned. He had a couple of big games, past 2 games, kind of really stepped
And he
it
was
up.
big for you guys last
Around
year,
the
too.
rim.
He had some big moments for you guys last year.
For sure, he did. Yeah, especially when we played when I was at Malloy. Yes, he destroyed us when I was at Malloy. But no, I mean, very knowledgeable. Like you said, he played Zavarian, right? He played JUCO ball. He had a big summer. He was the MVP of the Rodney Park Summer
Yes.
League.
Yeah.
Had a huge preseason.
And another transfer player for you, right? Another transfer player.
Yes, the JUCO kid, right? Exactly, yes. But was there last year. So, when you talk about the other guys being older or having the experience, his experience, obviously not just in the JUCO level, but also just having been there at the program, right? Being one of the 4 returners. So help these guys in terms of, what's like to be in part of the program, what are the requirements, things like that. He can help guide a lot of these guys. Great knowledge for the game,
Another
during the
IQ
games.
guy, right? Another IQ guy.
Huge IQ guy. He'll come up to me during games and say, "Coach, we should do this or we should do that," or just keep. And it helps out because you're not going to see everything sometimes from the sidelines when you got a million things going on. So as a coach, I really appreciate that type of someone like that being vocal and helping out in that sense.
And a guy who played a lot of big minutes for the team last year, I know was an honor roll player at some point during the season. And that's a guy that, again, is going to be really important for you off the bench because, one of the things you've always talked about in the past, whether it was at other stops, and I'm sure it's going to ring same here at Queens College, is that you want to have a deep roster. You want to have a deep rotation. You want to have 8, 9 guys to come in there and provide big minutes. And he's one of those guys that's going to be very important off the bench. And he's played big minutes. He's been a JUCO player, and he had some big minutes and some big moments for this team last year. And that's why it's very important, as what you've always said throughout the years here, is that you want to have a team that 8, 9 guys can come in and play.
Yeah, definitely. And he's another guy that plays the 5 spot. So now, between him and Henry, right, that 5 spot becomes, very interesting and very competitive. And to your point, depth as well. So if one of them gets into foul trouble, one of them maybe not performing that day for whatever reason, we have that variable. We can obviously take, one off the bench and whatnot and slip them in there. But when you have that type of depth, it just makes it that much better for your team and that much more competitive, and kind of obviously helps with the winning.
Absolutely, no question about that. Another one of those players that's going to be important for us is Ahmed Gallimore, another local guy, and he's also had some experience elsewhere. And talk to me about what Ahmed Gallimore is going to bring for us here in the second half.
For sure. So he's another tri-captain as voted by his teammates. Ahmad's been playing for a while, so another quote unquote seasoned vet. Ahmad comes from Slippery Rock. I don't know if you're familiar with Slippery Rock, but Slippery Rock is part of the PSAC conference.
Yes.
So PSAC conference, another ultra competitive conference. Another IQ guy. You look at Ahmad, he's 6'7", he's lefty, he can shoot it, right? What's not to love about
versatile
that?
Player,
right?
interesting
player, right? For sure. So, just going down the list and you say, okay, it's another veteran on our list, that kind of really helps to add to that depth.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about him, again, is a Bronx kid, goes to play at Arkansas, comes back here. I mean, I think that adds also some interesting life skills off the court that's just going to help him. And it also goes back to what you've been saying throughout the conversation here is guys want to play. Guys want to get out there and they want to win. This is again a way step up in a direction in a sense that these guys are all about winning, and there's a lot of professionalism, and whether it's like you said, transfer players, guys that have played a few years elsewhere, and even being here a few years, I think that that's going to be another key quality to this team going forward. And I think that Ahmad brings that to the table, and I think with his experience, like you said, playing multiple positions, that's going to help us here. I'll come back to some of the players in a minute, but I got to talk to you about Coach Collier. Obviously, he's been very important, leading this team, his own success in other places. I mean, this is a guy, as a coach, has a resume with the win over Oregon. So when you say those things, I mean, that speaks volumes. And talk to me about Coach Collier and what's it like coaching alongside him.
No, for sure. So Coach Collier's been there for a while now. 9 years, right? Before that, he coached at the D1 level.
And has a win over Oregon, by the way, in his resume.
Yeah,
a major thing.
Has coached at Massacre Garden a couple of times, right? Coached with Bruiser Flint, who I'm sure you've heard of.
Oh yeah, we know him. Yeah, of course.
Right, over at UMass, right? Yeah. And then obviously followed him over to Drexel. So obviously has a lot of experience. So when the opportunity was presented to me, and we talked about it, to me was kind of a no-brainer in that sense, right?
I mean, listen, win over Oregon, coach with Bruiser Flint. Okay, check the boxes. I'm going to check those off. Yeah, I'll be going there. I don't blame you.
So from that aspect, just, from the experience and the knowledge and things that we could do together, given my experience, I just felt the pieces matched, so to speak, things that I've done, on the recruiting side, things that I've done, at my other stops, and having coached against him, I knew his personality type. I knew about him, having coached him at my previous school, against him rather, in my previous school. So that kind of really, it's funny how things all fall together. It's funny how things, we say basketball's and coaching is a big world, but it's really a small world.
Yeah.
How he's kind of, I want to say kind of moved across the street, so to speak, right? Stayed in the conference, but just moved across the street.
It's funny, I say this in almost anything. You'll always be somebody that you run into, and it is a small world in a lot of ways. So what do you get then from Coach Collier's experience to help yourself, whether it's here at Queens, whether it's with Game Breaker Athletics, or anything else that you're going to do with his experience? Because again, his experience is far more unique than the other head coaches you've been with. Obviously, obviously McSloy was certainly, a friend to the show, and Coach McSloy has always been very high on my list of coaches that have come on here. But in terms of what Coach Collier has brought to the table, I mean, what do you get from him, from your own coaching experiences and anything else?
So that's a good point. You talk about by various stops and different head coaches. Coach Collier is different because he actually started as a manager. He started as a manager at UMass, right? So he really started from the ground up, right?
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? It wasn't like one of these guys that just graduated college, played D1 basketball and
baby.
Right. And all got a job, right? He started, as a manager, running around doing operational tasks, from, getting guys food to making sure they're in class, right? And worked his way up to becoming a head coach.
It's funny you said that. I had a guy on here a few days ago, a producer, and he produced a lot of these big rock bands, and that's how he got his start in producing and in engineering and mixing. He was a runner, and he wound up, getting a break and, working with Peter Gabriel, but that's how he got the break. And in some ways that goes back to the circle of life with Coach Collier. He started basically just doing different errands, different tasks, and it's led him to where he is. I have such an affinity and respect for guys like that because, like you said, they started from the ground up.
Yeah. And he knows all the intricacies. He knows all the details, from the managers, the assistant coaches, the players, obviously, right? So there's no fooling him, right? So
he's on the job. That's a job,
right?
He's done all the jobs,
right? You can't BS him if you tried. So and with me, the way I am in particular about certain things in terms of reading scouts, in terms of guys showing up on time and things like that, right? That's kind of, I think, where we work hand in hand is him and I'd say the reason why we work well together is we really pay attention to details. So I'm very detail oriented because I feel when you pay attention to details, each one of those details will add up, right? And it'll make the team that much better, and then it gives them a greater chance for success and for winning.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point, and I think that that's why we're excited about the program. And I think winning two of our last three games, and especially the win over Georgian Court, is going to help us undoubtedly. And I got to talk about another player here before I come back to the coaching staff and the rest of them. Is that's Leighton Freed, obviously another guy that started for you guys, has played some big minutes, and another player that I think we're going to expect a lot from in conference play.
Definitely. So Leighton is I would say one of the younger guys, but he has experience. So a transfer from Mansfield, which is another PSAC
Yes.
school, right, where he played a good amount of minutes there. He played high school ball at Central Dauphin in Pennsylvania. Ultra competitive high school, just in sports overall, not just
Yeah.
basketball. Leighton to me is a tough as nails player. He just wants to play. So he'll do whatever. You'll see him if you watch clips of him, you watch our games. He's diving for balls. He's attacking the rim. He doesn't care if guys are bigger than him, right? He just wants to see that court. When you have someone like that just really plays hard and really just wants to compete. Again, another aspect which makes coaches' jobs that much easier.
I think it also says something else. And we were talking about this with the various coaches that have come on here. And as I said, this coaching carousel on Sportswire this month, I think it speaks a volume, coach, to the players themselves and the time that they put into this, the amount of sacrifices, the work, the blood, sweat, and tears. One of the things I use on Sportswire all the time is blood, sweat, and tears. And people put their blood, sweat, and tears into things like this. And I think for a moment, what I see is that I give it up to the players because they are putting so much of their blood, sweat, and tears to be out here, to be competitive, to go out there, not only be the best players for our program here, but to be the best teammates possible, because that makes everybody better around them. And I think that speaks, again, all the things that you're saying here tonight, I think shows to the character of these players and the blood, sweat, and tears they're putting into this to make sure that this program is going to be in a much better place for years to come.
No, definitely. Like I said earlier, they're all guys that love it. Leighton, for example, he's from Pennsylvania. He the first time he's been home since the summer is this week.
I had the Five Towns players internationally, and you knew Pisani, and that's the same thing this week. They left this past weekend. Yep.
Right. So it's a commitment, right? It's not just, yes, I want to play college basketball, right? To be a student athlete, at this level or any level, it's a commitment, right? You have to really, really love it to play at the next level. And that's, when you have guys that truly do, it makes it fun. It makes it fun for me as a coach.
Yeah, because you want players that want to be here. You want players that want to buy in and want to win. That's the whole point. I mean, because everybody's putting their time into this. Everybody's putting a sacrifice. You have family. I mean, you have other responsibilities outside of this. So I think that that's an important thing. But I think for a moment it shows, like I said, to the character of the players that they're putting so much into this. And maybe some guys aren't getting as many minutes as they want. Maybe some guys aren't getting the ball as much, but they want to be here and they want to win. And I think that's why the program is in the right place. It's in the right direction for the first time in a long time. And I got to talk to you about the rest of the coaches on staff. Obviously, Coach Blunt and obviously Coach Osis. And I mean, talk to me about the rest of the staff and what's it like coaching alongside them.
No, for sure. Well, I'll start first with Coach Stanley, Justin Stanley. So he was with me previously at my previous school.
Yes.
And before that, coached at the same AAU organization I did previously as well. So I've known him for a while. So when you talk about loyalty and someone having your back, Coach Stanley's definitely one of the people that stands out in my mind when you talk about that. So when I came over to Queens, definitely, I spoke to Coach Matt Collier, said, this is someone we need to bring over as well, right? And Coach Stanley's responsible for our defense.
So offense, right?
An offense, yeah. So that's how it's really good to kind of work hand in hand with him. Giving my experience with him, it makes it easier. Not someone new in that sense. So it's been nothing but a pleasure, obviously, to work with him. Coach Cesar Osestes, like you said, been there for a while. He kind of hands over our player personnel. So again, that kind of another piece of us all working together. So he really knows the ropes of Queens, knows everybody there. Another Long Island guy.
Our Long Island
All
Queens. We were talking about this over the weekend with two coaches on the Long Island side, and I was saying Queens, Long Island. It's like Brooklyn, Staten Island. You go over the bridge, and
that's really what it
it's the
right.
same
That's
thing.
exactly it.
It's
Yeah.
the same thing.
So he is a huge help with the recruiting aspect as well. I've seen him at every school I've been at recruiting. I always see him recruiting at right. So
Right.
to have someone else like that to me is a huge aspect because, like you said earlier, it's about the players, right? So
Absolutely.
when I say about the players, if they don't perform, they don't do the right thing, then guess what? We don't win, and we don't look good as coaches.
That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. No. Listen, I mean, I think that obviously that's where we are, going forward and such, and when it comes to the team, what are the goals for you in 2026? What are some of your goals here?
To me, you know what I'm going to say. Cut down the net.
I gotta ask you, if I don't do it, you haven't been on here, and I gotta ask goals. I had Brendan on here, I had Jeff on here, who's at SUNY Old Westbury, and I had the other Jason. I gotta ask you. Nevertheless, still, what are your goals? I know the answer. I gotta ask it.
People have said to me before, well, as long as you make top 6 in the conference, you make the playoffs. I'm not a top 6 type of guy.
Yeah, I know. You want to.
I want to host. Right. I want to host because I feel hosting is a huge thing. Right. So I say hosting that number 1 seed. But I want to cut down a net and obviously get to the tournament and win a regional. That's to me is the goal. The goal is cutting down a net. And I know in speaking to our guys, that's what they want to. It's not just about making the playoffs. Yeah, if you make the playoffs, great, and you have a shot to win the whole thing. I understand that. But I just feel the ability of all of our guys is there, and it's a very talented
But I
team.
think you make a good point as we're here with Coach Jason Gaudioso, who is the assistant coach of the Queens Knights men's basketball team. If you're out there on Instagram, do me a favor, go follow the Queens Knights men's basketball team. You can also check out Coach Gaudioso's other duties, where he is the director of basketball operations for Game Breaker Athletics. Please go to GameBreakerAthletics.com. The Queens Knights men's basketball team returns to action on December 31st. Boy, New Year's Eve, and they're going to be in action here. It's going to be an afternoon game at least, but they're going to be in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which I know Bridgeport very well. But they'll be back here in Queens on the 3rd of January on a Saturday with Lincoln University, and home games to follow coming up against Damien on the 16th, which is 3 weeks from Friday. They'll also have a home game on Sunday, and you can see the rest of the schedule on the queensknights.com website. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice figuratively and literally with all sports matters here on Sportzwire. Now, listen, I know from when we were at another place that not having a home playoff game certainly hurt our chances. So I understand after last season, and I understand based off the team that you have, an obvious goal would want to have the opportunity to host some home playoff games so we can get to that prize of winning the conference. I think that that's a logical answer to a question I was obviously going to ask. I mean, that made a whole lot of sense, which I expected you to do that. So, I wasn't surprised. I mean, I'd still ask you the question, but I got to give you a couple things here first. I'm going to, first of all, share my screen, which is a lot different from when you've been here in the past. Yeah, we've moved up. Think about it, right? Skype calls. We were getting there. We did like Zoom with you. I think then with another guy that I hosted with. I think we sort of were doing it on the stream, but now I got a whole bunch of fancy objects, and I got fancy lights in the background. But the first thing is, it's Queens Knights Men's Basketball Day on all Sportswire radio platforms. That's number one. We'll give you that. Yeah, we'll give you that. But, we're not done, because I certainly know that you're waiting for the other thing I'm about to do. So I'm very excited to share my screen for this, because this has certainly been a long time coming, because after all, you are the only coach that's been here for 3 stops. So I have to make sure that I take care of you so you can come back. Hopefully you stay at this stop for a while, though. But who knows where the coaching carousel goes. I don't want to push my luck. You may not come back after this, but nevertheless, I do want to share my screen, because I can now formally induct you into the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. I know should have done this a while back, but you were at one place and had to get a waiver, and the guy looked at this and no, he's got this person on here. I don't know, but the good news is you're at Queens College. You're on the better part of the Queens Long Island border. I can say that as a city guy, but no, we love Long Island. No, we really love Long Island on Sportswire. I can't tell you enough how much we love Long Island, but I certainly love having you here in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. You were well deserved. And it's not just about what you do on the court, really. It's about what you do off the court. And I've known you a long time now. I've known you going on 6 years. And really, if I could for a minute before we come back to the team, what you coaches do to me means more than the wins and losses, than the 1,000 point scorers you have or the all-star recruits or whatever it is, because you have a job that you have to recruit and put these people in places to be successful in life and to be productive members of our community. That's why it means so much to me to have coaches like yourself in the Hall of Fame, because of what you do, not just, like I said, on the court, but off the court, because you're responsible for these men to go out there and to be productive members of society. And that's why coaches like yourself are well and more than well deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. And really, I should put you in multiple times. We'll probably do that for the next appearance. But no, seriously, because coaches, like I said, yourself and another guy named Jason, certainly you have a very difficult job, because it's not just about, like I said, the wins and losses, the 1,000 point scorers, about all the fancy awards, because these guys have to go out there and be productive members of society. And your job as a coach isn't just about what they do on the court.
No, well, first and foremost, I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Thank you. Like you said, I've been waiting for that. So
you have been waiting for you, but I will have to say, in defense of myself, I couldn't bring you one.
I mean, there was 181 people in front of me, but
well, I mean, if it makes you feel better, I mean, I have some pretty big names in the Hall of Fame now. I do some big names.
I'm joking. But to your point, though, for me in particular, the basketball piece is a minute piece of it. We talk about offense, talk about defense.
Oh, always. Listen, when Ryan came on here over the years, Coach Flores came on here, when Linda Day would come on, obviously, Mr. Facina, Litwin. I mean, we had Brendan. Yes. I mean, I've had, Matt, obviously Matt Healing. I got to give Matt a big shout out. Always wishes me happy birthday. I mean, all the coaches that come on over the years, I've always been amazed. And of course, I have to bring up Coach Mateko. I have to bring him up. But all of you as coaches individually, regardless of where you've coached at, your job is so much more than just wins and losses. And like I said, 1,000 point scorers.
Yeah. Someone told me a couple of years ago, I actually was I was doing a camp in Vegas. And someone came up to me and we were just talking similar conversation, and the saying they came up to me, which always stuck with me, believe it or not, was it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmys and Joes.
No, it's an important thing, because when I do these segments with you guys as coaches, I always find it, to me, very important to do them and to put you guys in the Hall of Fame, really because of, like I said, what you do. I've had fancy people on here, big shots, but really, it's more important to have guys like you on here, and guys certainly like Coach Litwin. Yes, Mr. Facina. Yes, Mr. Wells. I mean, I can go on, but because of what you do to help these people in society, I get the big shots on. It's great. Listen, don't get me wrong. It gets me followers. It got me the big numbers, so you can keep coming back on, and it helps the gravy train. But they've already been successful. They've done it for themselves. You're doing this job for others. You're doing this job for the players to go out and also help themselves around their community. It's important for what the job that you have, because at the same time, this could be a player you have. It could be they're the first person graduating college in their family. This is a major thing. So that's why it's really important to have you here and talk about the great things that you do. Talk about the great things that Coach Collier's doing. Talk about the great things that we're doing here at Queens, because you have to get these players ready for the workforce. Yes, I know we want Campbell and Menender and Prescott to be pros, and they very well, I'm sure, will be. But, still, at the end of the day, we have to get them ready to be productive members of the community. And I think that that's why your job is so vital.
No, definitely. when you can help a kid, and I call them kids because they're still kids, after college and help them in what I quote unquote call real life,
Yep.
whether it's playing professionally or like we mentioned, like, you mentioned Matt and Gordon, who are now teachers. Like that's the type of stuff that it's all about, and B, warms my heart. The
Yeah.
fact that they still keep in touch, the fact that they, really have done well after college. Like that to me is what it's all about. I'm not looking for accolades. I'm not looking to say, I did this or I did that. It's more of helping guys out, helping these kids out in life. And if I can improve their life by even 1%, then to me as a coach, I've done my job. And you mentioned about the other coaches like Jason Facina, McSloy, and Heenan and Mateko and whatnot, right? I think the characteristics between all of us that are similar, and it's funny you mentioned those names because those are all friends of mine, and the probably the reason why
I'm not going
right?
to mention any of yours. I mean, I'm not going to mention names. I'm going to mention the names that I would say we mutually like. Certainly, Coach Mateko. Obviously, Billy. Love Billy. Sorry about the Bengals, Billy, but I got to mention Mr. Facina. I mean, I got to mention people that I want to talk about and like it, and you like.
For sure, and I think it's we all get along because I think for two words we care, right?
Yeah,
and to say
I agree
we
with
care,
that.
you're not doing it for the money, you're not doing it for the accolades. You have a passion for this, and you really care about helping these student athletes out, and that's what it's all about. And it's funny because, like you say, going back to my other point, it's a big world, but a small world in coaching and in basketball, but it really is a small world because everybody knows everybody, right? And the fact that you can also become friends out of it, to me, is a huge plus.
Yeah, and I think that that's the intangible that all of you guys have together. Coach McSloy, I'm always so grateful for Coach McSloy's support because I never forget. I spoke to him on the phone, and I spoke to him right before Christmas, actually, and he took my call, and I got a chance to have him on the platform, and he really, I got to say, went out of his way. I never forget when I got his phone number and I called him and we spoke, and he could have just said, frig you, but he spent the time and he always kept in touch when he was at St. Joe's, always talked to me, always, was supportive, and, I'm forever grateful for that. Obviously, Billy was here a bunch of times. Sorry, Billy, about the Bengals. I see Billy's doing well for himself, and, I don't have to mention Mr. Facina because he was just here, but I'm sure you'd love to say a few things about Mr. Facina because, I got to ask you about that. He's probably watching this right now. Hopefully he doesn't, pull over on the side of the road right now, whether it's the Long Island Expressway or the Belt, or and all of a sudden gets worked up here. But I'm sure you'd like to say something to Mr. Facina.
Yeah, well, I hear he's at a recruiting event right now, so hopefully he's finding some more players.
Well, we were talking with Brendan.
Year.
When Brendan was here yesterday, Brendan basically said, I'm recruiting till I'm at bed at 12, and I'm recruiting from like 8 to 11. So I mean, yeah, Brendan basically said that's what
it's the grind. For sure. No, for sure. But it's funny because you talk about recruiting and us, in our certain aspects. Those are the type of players you're looking for, similar to yourself as a coach, right? Some of you kind of call a program guy, right? And I know, obviously I'm not a soccer coach, but I just know the type of people that Brendan and Jason recruit, right? They recruit program level guys, right? And I say program level guys, right? Guys that are nice, guys that don't cause trouble, right? And then obviously also good at soccer, right? But that goes back to my earlier points in terms of the coachability aspect.
Right.
So when you can really have those pieces mixed, like that's kind of I want to say, sort of speak to the secret sauce to help you, compete and get winning. Right?
You like KFC? Is that what I'm getting at?
No. Hey,
I don't eat fast food at all. Nothing. People look at me and I will not touch any of it. But that's a different show. And please, for our players, only touch it after like you played, like and ran 100 miles. After Coach Collier and Coach Gaudioso made you go out there, and do this. So nothing you want to say to Coach Facina? Nothing. No, you don't want to dunk on him. No joke on him. Nothing. No.
Nah. I'll say this.
Come on. You've been waiting for 2 years for this, 2.5 years. You didn't want to do it. All right.
I'll say this though. I will say that the next time we're on, it should be myself.
I'll bring it back on during the season. I mean, now you're allowed to come on at Queens. I mean, I love to talk about Queens. I mean, Malloy. Sorry, but I'm not gonna go out and talk about Malloy anymore.
Live from Duff's.
I would do but you see, people ask me about doing live at Duffy's, but the problem is Duffy's has very bad Wi-Fi. The internet is terrible. It's really And I don't go to Duffy's much because a couple of years ago, unfortunately, I'm going to say the story on the air. I go into the place and everybody had known me. I feel embarrassed still, but some guy just like, he was drunk and he was just like ready to like throw the hammer. It was just me and my friends show up there. I shouldn't say it on the air, but I mean, I'm going to do it. I did nothing wrong. I just showed up there. The guy looked at me and the guy just wanted to like, he had a bad day. And I know the owner and he's like, you're going to come in. I'm like, I'm spooked out. I feel like Billy Martin with George Steinbrenner when, when Billy Martin was in Yogi Berra, when Yogi Berra didn't come to Yankee Stadium. It's great.
Right, we'll have to find some, maybe all
Joe and Pat. Well, actually, Joe and Pat's. Everybody knows me and Joe and Pat's. I got to say, Joe and Pat, which is, by the way, a lot closer to CSI. You guys are in the same conference as CSI. So,
yes.
So Joe and Pat's, I mean, I go to Joe and Pat's and I get a table. I don't even have to do nothing in Joe and Pat's. I mean, I just went there with my buddy from the other side of the bridge, Mr. Joseph Rosas, and people were like, whoa, good to see you. I mean, that would be a place of interest. But yeah, but nothing but Mr. Pisani, I understand that Mr. Rafael Pisani, Mr. Rafael.
Yes, I do. Yeah, he coaches my stepson in soccer.
Oh.
Yep. And now that the season is over, no longer going to, obviously look to get back to that. But but great kid, great player. I watched just a couple of trainings they did, and I don't know anything about soccer, but I saw my stepson just get better just from one training. So, excited to get back into that again with him.
Yeah, no question about that. And before we get to a few more things with Coach Gaudioso, I want to plug one more time Game Breaker Athletics. And why is that important? Because the mission of Game Breaker Athletics is to empower young athletes to reach their full potential on and off the court. Through competitive travel teams, skill-building clinics, and high-energy camps, we provide a positive environment where players develop fundamentals, build confidence, and learn the values of teamwork, discipline, and resilience. We're committed to inspiring a love for the game while preparing our athletes to succeed in basketball and life. Programs range from travel teams, clinics and camps, tournaments, team tryouts, parent and player resources, team store. Got to get your merchandise, and you can see more information on the Game Breaker Athletics website. There's GameBreakerAthletics.com. Coach Gaudioso is a part of that. He's the director of basketball operations, and you can go check out more information there. All right. I appreciate that, and we certainly want to make sure everybody goes out and supports that. But now that we're going to conference placement, obviously we're going to have some more games coming up December 31st. We're going to be out in action, which is 9 days from today. Give me a couple of keys for this team now that we're going into conference play and how we're going to be successful.
I think just first and foremost, continually competing. Right. So, competing in practice, competing in the games. Right.
You've always talked about that at the stops. You always speak about practice.
So the more these guys are competing at practice, the more they're going after it at each other. It's going to help translate on the court when it comes game time. And it's also going to help, translate into wins. The other thing I would say is making sure that, they are gelled, but making sure they continue to be gelled. Right. And like I said,
you made the point that this is a team that has only 4 players who have returned from last year, right? You have a bunch of other players that are the transfers, or do you have a team that's still
getting newer team? You have a newer team.
Yeah.
Right. Not newer team in terms of experience, but newer in terms of playing together. So when I say gelled, just continue to do things off the court as they do now. Right. All these things help add up because, they need to make sure they're working as a team in order to help win. So the more they're together off the court, the more they're playing together on the court, right? Getting those reps in, competing, improving. Those are things that I think are going to help us really come conference play, because conference play is going to be more games on a weekly basis, number one, right? They're going to be very competitive because, to your point, losing a conference game is like losing a tournament game, right? Because then it drops your standings, right?
Yep.
And if you're familiar
with
ECC,
the competition in this conference, everybody could win on any given day. This is not
100%.
I'm going to say with as much respect as possible. This isn't a City University of New York conference where you could take the calendar and go, yeah, we'll win. We could win that one. Yeah, we could win the one. This conference, every game,
every game, it's a 9 school conference, and the top 6 teams make the conference tournament, the conference playoffs, which they call it, right? With one being the main seed, 1 and 2 receiving buys, and then 3 and 4 hosting, right? That first round. and then it going to 1 seed for the host. So every game matters. To me, depending upon who you play in the playoffs can matter, right? Get you to the championship game or whatnot, and then you know. So that to me is really the crux of it. Yes, non-conference games are great and they help prepare us, right?
Yeah.
Definitely some tough competition, but the conference games is really going to help us really, get the possibility of getting into the
Yeah, because I agree with you in the sense that because of the depth of the conference, but also traveling. We talked about this when Mr. Facina was here, Mr. Wells, is that you want to be in your own building because you don't want to have to travel to a place miles and miles away to play a playoff game. Obviously, yes, we're happy to be in the playoffs, like you said, but I think to have that ability to host a couple playoff games, I think is really key because of that travel part. We were talking about it with Mr. Facina again, and they had to travel all across the state of New York. They probably lived on a bus for 3 weeks. We're going to have at this the same problem, but I think the point remains is that we want to be able to go out there and play games in our building because we control our own destiny, and that gives us the opportunity to go deep, and ultimately the end goal is to win the conference championship, which would be a milestone. And I think again,
huge.
considering this conference, I think we have a chance because I think we're coming off the momentum of the best season the program has had from a conference standpoint in almost 15 years. I think that's why we're really excited. Obviously, talking about Mr. Campbell, talking about Mr. Menenda, Mr. Prescott, Mr. Pena, Mr. Jones. I mean, we have a lot of great players here, but I think ultimately there's a program that's put together a plan, yourself included, that I think we're really excited about the second half going forward.
Definitely. And, if you're familiar, anyone that's familiar with our conference knows that, we have 2 schools in Buffalo, right? You have one in UDC, one in Rochester. So it's not like we're going down the block to play.
Not like we're
right?
going. Not like you want to
go 9 hours away, right?
Oh, not like when you're in CCNY. Okay, we're gonna take the 6, and we're gonna transfer to the 4. We're gonna get off and then go one other train stop. We're at Baruch. We're CCNY. We're gonna go maybe take the 2 and the 3. We're gonna go and take it to the 1, and we're gonna be at John Jay. We're gonna go with CCNY. We're gonna stay at the 4 and the 5 to go to Brooklyn. We're gonna when CSI was in there. All right, we'll take the bus. It's not like that at all. I mean,
No, the schools are spread out, right? So to your point is, I don't want to be going to Buffalo 9 hours to go play
especially
a road playoff game.
Yeah, with that weather, forget about it.
It's February, March, right? So and then obviously, like you said earlier, just the momentum, the home court, right? The crowd, the individuals there, right? That to me helps with all aspects of the game. And like I said, every 1% helps. Right. So, obviously the goal, like I said, is to host, but especially given our conference where it's spread out.
I'm going to say this before we get to closing thoughts. This is what I love about college basketball at this level, D2, D3, is I love watching those conference games. I love the competition of it, and not to go into the NBA conversation, but to me, there's something about games at this level. To me, it makes me fired up. It makes me want to sit there and watch. That's why I love, people look at me crazy still to this day. They say, oh, Tom, you had all these great people. You still talk college basketball or college soccer, but I tell them you don't understand. There is a certain competition. There is a certain, to me, atmosphere and intensity that I don't think you get elsewhere, which to me really fires me up. And I think this is the best place you've ever been.
Yeah, no doubt. And to your point, anybody can win any day. We have a very good team in our conference, Damon, who's one of the top teams in the country. But last year, I mean, look what happened. They won the conference, but then they lost in the tournament to someone in our conference stack, right? So you never know, right? And I come from the mindset of anybody's beaten in any given day.
I agree with you on that.
Again, that's something that makes it fun because obviously winning's fun, but that competitive nature, and the possibility of
fire in the belly, it gets the fire, and there's a certain fire there, and I think that we've gotten a taste of the winning, and I think we want to taste it a little more, and I think that we've got some players here that are going to help us get there. And we're excited one more time before we get to closing thoughts because our Queens Knights men's basketball team is coming off a victory over Georgian Court. They're also going to return to action here after opening up the Christmas presents on December the 31st, right before the ball drops. They're going to be playing Bridgeport in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and we're going to certainly ring in the new year with Queens Knights men's basketball coverage here throughout conference play. And if you want to follow the guys one more time, they have an Instagram page, which is the best way to keep in touch with the Queens Knights men's basketball team. And I put that link up here one more time. You also have a website where you can check out some of the players, some of the news, some of the different things. You want to get yourself familiarized. Also, Coach Gaudioso is the director of basketball operations for Game Breaker Athletics. And I would highly recommend that you check them out, follow, support, and please support those who support us. And also, before we get ready to sign off, it is Queens Knights Men's Basketball Day on Sportswire radio platforms. Thank you, Zilla. And Mr. Gaudioso is in the Hall of Fame. It may have took him a little while longer, but I would still say that you would have been in here a lot earlier. But you really, that is my defense in this case. You know, I had inducted somebody into the Hall of Fame last week, and I said, oh, I owed you an apology. And I said, well, because we didn't do it sooner, I didn't realize. And in this case, I actually am going to say I'm not sorry for this one because I would have put you in like 2 years ago. We couldn't bring you on. Couldn't bring you on. I mean, so I would say you'd probably be at an early number like Mr. Facino was. You would have probably been like the next one after because he's like number like 10 or something like that, number 11.
Oh, wow.
He comes on, but because off season he'll come on off season. No problem. I'll come on during the season. Can't talk to him during the season.
He's too busy.
Well, Brendan and Jeff, I had Brendan and Jeff. They're like, yeah, we'll come on, you know. But then they're like, oh, well, Facina's like, oh. It was like, you know, I mean, Jason knows we love Jason on here. Jason's, you know, been coming on here just a little longer than you. But all right, before we get to closing thoughts, is there anything else you want to share, talk, or promote when it comes to the Queens Knights men's basketball team yourself, or anything else?
No, I would just say we appreciate all the support we can get. You know, get excited for us for the later part of the season.
Please beat Malloy and CSI. Do me a favor. Please beat Malloy twice and beat CSI twice.
Absolutely. Consider it done. You know, although I can't guarantee anything. But yeah, exactly. But I have to have that positive mindset.
Good point. Jeff talked about that when he was here. I had Mr. Positive. You know, I got that.
You got to be, right?
Yeah.
But no, again, appreciate all the support. You know, and thank you for everything you've done, right? I know you thank everybody for what they've done, but people should be thanking you for what you do, you know, in the sense of setting up all these interviews and whatnot. And in particular,
it was fun doing them this week. It was fun. It was fun to have you back. Yeah, 6 years. I know you almost 6 years. I know you almost 6 years.
And the growth, you know, behind it, right? Like you said.
Oh, it was a grind. Let me tell you about grinding. Right. I grinded my teeth. I went through dental surgery this year. I thought I was going to die. I went to New Jersey, and it was like New Jersey was like at the end of the world. It was like I just couldn't get to the place, and it was like the dentist doesn't. I'm gonna make you laugh. The dentist doesn't tell me to take the mouth guard. I keep the mouth guard. I'm like gonna pass out, and I couldn't. Yeah, he didn't tell me. After I had dental surgery on this side of my mouth, my tooth was extracted. Then the right side was a little bad, but when I did it to New Jersey, this guy, after I paid him $4,000, didn't tell me to take the mouth gauge out. That's what it was, and I didn't know. And then it was finally like take the mouth gauge out like 10 hours later, and I was like almost ready to pass out. It's been a grind, literally. It's literally been a grind since 6 years ago. I mean, I know people look at it now and they're like, wow, the bright lights and the fancy video, but it wasn't always that way, It was,
But I'll say this, the next one we do, I want a live, when I say not going live, but I'm saying in person rather.
Yeah, well, we've met before. I mean, like I said, you're always Joe and Pat's is always great.
I'm saying Joe and Pat's, you could have me in for
Joe and Pat's. Maybe you know me, Joe and Pat's. Joe and Pat's is like I can get a table and like I don't have to worry. Joe and Pat's, they.
That should be the site for the next one.
Everybody, you know what? I just saw my friend, you saw, I took a photo with Anthony Finkel's like, well, why don't you do a show with Joe and Pat's? And I'm like, well, what am I going to do?
He has the same idea.
You don't realize now, when I first interviewed you, all I had was my phone, a clip to the internet thing, and that was it. Now I have 10 lights in front of me. I have another thing in front of me. I have the video software. I have to share the screens. It takes me 20 minutes to set up. It's not like it was before.
remember you had a sponsor back then too for the
What's
show.
that?
You had a sponsor for the show.
You know what? Everybody asked me that. Like, why don't you? You've had WWE, you've had the rock stars on. Can you get a sponsor? I'm like,
but you
it's a
did back
challenge.
then. Bridgewood Tavern Station, if you remember that.
Yeah, we had that. Yeah, we had them, and big deal. So and so, got us got me a shirt. Whoop-de-doo. I mean, you're talking about a paid sponsor, but I always tell people my bank account's got a lot of zeros, so I think we're okay with that. I've had a very unconventional route. I hope your players don't go around, but I've had an unconventional route to get to the zeros, but I don't think people would feel too sorry for me if they saw the amount of zeros. So, but we're happy. I've got the monetized. Listen, I got monetized on YouTube. I get not even $1 a day. Facebook, I'm monetized, so we're there. TikTok, I just got the live button. So look, it's baby.
It's growing.
It's like anything else. It's like your players. It takes time. It's like anything else. I goes back to when I played basketball as a kid. Before we go, my dad said, I never forget when my dad was alive. He would call me from work when he worked at Prudential Financial, and I never forget this. He would always call me. You're a financial guy. You would definitely know this. Down right across from the Staten Island Ferry, Whitehall Street. And I never forget. He would call me and always say, Are you dribbling? Are you practicing? He bought me this double basketball. He didn't buy me a Spalding ball. We couldn't afford the Spalding ball at the time. But I had this basket. I never forget, on the asphalt, right in front of us. I would walk with the ball, and he would always call me. He said, Tom, are you practicing? And, I didn't get what he was trying to say until doing this, because I practiced long enough to, people felt sorry and got me 1,700 plus subscribers on YouTube. So, the point is it's a grind, you keep going, and
absolutely
that's how it goes. But we're going to definitely meet in person again. We're going to definitely do that. And maybe we'll see some of your former players as well with that. But in the meantime, before we sign off, because you have to follow the Queens College Knights men's basketball team on Instagram. Also, check out their website. Also, it is their day on all Sportswire radio platforms. It is also Mr. Gaudioso's day to be in the Hall of Fame. Please support Game Breaker Athletics, GameBreakerAthletics.com. And one more time, the Knights will be in action here coming up on December 31st, New Year's Eve. They used to say Rockin' New Year's Eve with Dick Clark, but instead it's going to be Rockin' New Year's Eve with the Queens Knights men's basketball team. So there you have it. Coach, certainly long overdue to have you back on. Looking forward to having you back on here in a few weeks or during the season when we get closer to conference tournament time. And
absolutely,
Merry Christmas to you and your wonderful family. Happy New Year, and congratulations on the victory, and we'll see you soon.
Great. Thank you so much. Great speaking to you, Tom.
You got it. That is Coach Jason Gaudioso. He is the assistant coach of the Queens Knights men's basketball team. He is also the director of basketball operations for Game Breaker Athletics. Please support both programs on social media. The Knights are coming off a victory over Georgian Court. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice, figuratively and literally, we're all music and wrestling and all sports matters. If you're here on Sportswire Radio, like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be back here with more coverage later to be announced. But until then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio, where all sports matters. See you soon, everybody. Happy holidays.